Hello, everyone. My name is Mayuri Burkada, and I'm an accounting manager for the Asset Management Ontario. Data and information management are important foundations for asset management. Data and the information gathered from it are key enablers for strategy and planning, decision making, asset health and performance monitoring, and risk management. The data may be centralized or distributed, but it is important not to underestimate the value of the data and information held within an organization's asset information system. This presentation is about developing an asset register, which is the heart of the asset information system. This presentation, we will show you how the asset and the information that we put into the asset register connects to the Provincial Regulation 588-17. Managing data and information is not one of the most exciting topics of asset management, but everyone recognizes making the best, most confident decision starts with having the most accurate facts, and therefore maintaining accurate, complete data and information is foundational to asset management. This does not only help municipalities achieve the key requirements that are mentioned in this slide, which is informing on the asset levels of service, targets, asset condition and performance measurement data, maintenance history, estimated remaining service life, life cycle information, and cost for replacing and rehab of all these asset data. So these are some of the key requirements that are basically going to support the regulation, but it goes beyond this. To sustain dynamic organizational decision-making at all levels of the organization, it is important to have an asset register. This slide basically gives us definitions on some of the words that are being used within asset management, and they're confused as well. So for example, asset management system, these are basically interrelated elements to establish asset management policy, goals and processes to achieve those goals. So basically it's the overarching system. Asset management system is the overarching system, just like a roof of the house. Asset information system is one of the component of the asset management system. It basically contains information or data on all sorts of data like human resources, technology, processes, strategy, policy. It contains information on all those information. Asset register is actually one of the component of the asset information system. It is a centralized source of asset information. It contains information on the physical data, physical assets, and it's one place. So it's basically a one-stop shop for everybody to gather their information. Asset hierarchy is actually a key component of the asset register. To be able to use data at different levels of the organization, the data needs to be organized in a structured format. Asset hierarchy is going to help us do that basically. So therefore, asset hierarchy is a key component of the asset register. It's a method of organizing and viewing asset information in a set of logical groupings and subgroupings. The asset register. The asset register is the central to an organization's asset management system. This is where all the essential data is stored, and therefore it should be a source for the organization's asset data truth. And why is it the source of the asset data truth? Because again, as mentioned earlier, it's a one-stop shop for everybody. So anybody looking for any kind of data or information, instead of going to different systems to gather the information, they would be going to one place to get the information. And therefore, it is very important that the asset register is updated as soon as there is an update on the asset data. The asset data or the asset register should be kept up to date at all times, as it is a one-stop shopping place for any kind of asset data and information. It is therefore important that the asset register be structured in a way to support the organization's asset decision-making needs at any level within the organization. And one of the key or important message here is system integration within the asset register. So the next slide will give you more information on this system integration. Everybody knows that data is being collected or stored in different systems within an organization. Data could be collected or stored in SCADA, CMMS, GIS, financial systems like PeopleSoft. There could be modeling application. These are all different systems that need to integrate together to be able to provide inputs to the asset register. So instead of going to all these different systems to gather information, what we need to do is integrating all these systems into one, which is the asset register. It would be easy and efficiently derived, the data would be derived efficiently from the asset register. There would be, people would be able to get that information right away instead of going to different systems. As changes occur in the asset data, all this information needs to be passed on to the asset register to ensure a single data truth is being used to make asset management decisions. Much of the information to support measuring asset level of service and lifecycle costs will be generated from these data sources. Asset hierarchy. So now that we know that an asset register is nothing but a container of essential asset data, it is very important that we structure that asset register. And the way we structure that asset register is by using an asset hierarchy. So an asset hierarchy is a method of organizing and viewing asset information in a set of logical groupings and subgroupings. The hierarchy or the service to asset hierarchy should be created with a line of sight between the services and the assets required to support those services. Line of sight is an approach within an organization that looks to line up the work that is done directly on the assets with the objectives of the organization. It enables everybody to understand how they contribute to achieving success. Asset hierarchies ensures consistency of asset definitions across the organization. And more importantly, it facilitates analysis and decision-making at all levels of the organization, whether it be strategic or tactical. Establishing a common hierarchy framework is very important. It basically achieves a consistent line of sight asset management structure for all the municipalities' infrastructure type. It is important to note that managing infrastructure will vary from municipality to municipality. So asset hierarchies will also vary. The asset hierarchy should be developed in a way that best reflects and meets a municipality's asset management planning needs. The development of an asset hierarchy is a team effort and will be the source of lots of debate and will require some trial and error. Much of the debate will be about how the assets should be divided and at which level of the hierarchy they should be placed. It is important, though, that there is a balance between going too granular or too high level. For example, you don't want to set up your hierarchy in such a way that you are making capital planning decisions on valves and hydrants, nor on trying to forecast the replacement of the entire treatment plant, when you should be trying to forecast replacement of major systems in the treatment plant having different life cycles and life cycle strategies. The asset hierarchy should be designed with flexibility to meet long-range strategic, financial, capital, and operational planning requirement. So here's an example of what a service to asset hierarchy looks like. At the top of the hierarchy is the benefiting service. Next to the service is the service division, which represents the division of the assets into major functions providing the service. The key of the hierarchy are the asset classes. So these are groups of like assets. They would have the same level of service for the measure. They would be basically providing or basically portraying same risk to services as well. So for example, the pumping station, water pumping stations can be put together as an asset class. Bridges is another example that can be put together as an asset class. Major culverts, those could be put together as an asset class. The next in line is the assets. Assets are the major entities that are significant to the service delivery. When the planning happens, or when the life cycle modeling happens, it is basically based on the assets, the individual assets. And then on the reporting side, it gets rolled up to an asset class. So assets are very important. The next in line is the sub-assets. Sub-assets are primary elements or systems that form a significant portion of the asset. These are also capital items, but less significant in nature than primary assets. Examples could be a bridge deck, a pumping system, a roof, or an HVAC system. The next in line, the last one, is the component or the individual units that are generally maintenance items that can be readily replaced or maintained through the operations budget and are governed by maintenance level of service. So in an essence, the top of the pyramid is basically providing the right aggregation of assets for strategic decision-making and sustainability planning, while the lower section is providing information on the details that is required for project planning and lifecycle management and costing. And you can see there is a line of sight right up from the service to the component or the individual units. Any decisions that are made on the service level will impact these assets, sub-assets, and the components. And any decisions made at this level is going to impact the objectives of the service as well. So here's an example for a water service to asset hierarchy. So for the service side, we have water supply or water as the service. This water service has two service divisions. To be able to provide reliable water supply, we have distribution and we also have treatment. Here we will be talking about or taking an example of a water distribution. The next in line was the asset class. So in asset classes, we can have water mains and we can have pumping stations. For the assets, we could have a street from one street to the other. And then we can also have booster pumping station example for a pumping station. For sub-assets, these are again primary asset elements or sub-elements. So a subgroup of the assets, for example, the Smith Street, on the asset side, we had street 1 to 10, whereas in sub-asset, it would be further broken down into street 1 to 2. For the booster pumping station, we would have high lift pumping system, standby power generator sets. The option here is there could be where the assets are basically already broken down into a subset. So instead of having street 1 to 10, it would already be in a subset information, which is 1 street to 2 streets. So depending on how detailed your data is or how much your data is, this could be either on the asset side, and sub-asset can completely be ignored. The last one that we have components. So this is where it's going to involve your smaller items like valves, valve chambers, hydrants, service connection, etc. Same as the previous slide, the top part of the hierarchy would be providing information on corporate sustainability, whereas the lower part of the pyramid will give us information on our total cost of ownership. And this will again show the line of sight between the service and the assets that are providing that service. This next slide basically gives us the same information as the previous slide, just that in the previous slide it was shown as a pyramid. This is what that would look like in an Excel format. We have the services, we have the service division, which is the distribution. We have different asset classes under distribution, transmission mains, feeder mains. So these are all, again, assets that are grouped together because they portray the same risk to services. They use the same levels of service as well. And then it has a column of the assets that are under each of these asset classes, the sub-assets, and then the individual units and components. On the second page, we have, again, the water service, but we also have service division as a treatment and also groundwater treatment. So the reason why I had this second slide is to show that when I mentioned earlier that decisions or information can be provided at any level for any decision making within the organization, what I meant was on the reporting side, we can start reporting on the asset class. This could be the base, and then this can be rolled up on a service division. So we can have all these asset classes reported on treatment only, distribution only, groundwater system only, and then again rolled up on the water supply. So providing all this aggregation of the distribution, treatment, and groundwater treatment together. So it's very important that we have an asset hierarchy to see the flow from the service to the actual assets that are providing that service. Data and information. As we all know, asset management is data intensive, and sound information is derived from this data. Having complete, accurate data stored in proper format in the asset register is important for confident and accurate decision making. As part of assessing data needs, the data should be assessed for accuracy, completeness, and consistency. The timeliness of data updates is also important, as using out-of-date information negates data accuracy. So it's very important to evaluate our data quality. This slide shows information on what needs to be collected and how. So collecting asset data is very important. It needs to answer a series of questions. For example, what asset information do we need to support decision making? How can we efficiently collect the relevant data? How will this data be processed and delivered for useful information? How will the information or analysis of data be shared? What is the cost benefit in terms of resources to collect and analyze the information? This slide basically shows information on what the data needs to answer. We've collected the data, but now what does that data need to answer? So ultimately, having all the answers to these questions on this slide will ensure sustainable and reliable asset management planning and decision making. It needs to, obviously, when we look at the collection of the data, we need to make sure that the data that is being collected is actually used for decision making. If it is not used for decision making or any kind of decision making, then we need to relook at, do we really need to collect that data or not? We need to reevaluate that. Here's the line of sight. Just like the asset hierarchy, we need to have a line of sight for data as well. So the line of sight between the data being collected and the decision being made stemming from that data. So if you look at here, the data that has been collected, extent of wear or breaks or asset age, condition rating, all this information will be used to evaluate our asset levels of service. So to evaluate the condition of the asset, the operational functionality, capacity to meet the demand, operational resiliency. All these criteria will be able to measure once we have this set of data. This further gets into the asset level of service to measure what is our current asset level of service and what is our proposed asset levels of service. This will then help us in making decisions as to whether is the data or is the asset still viable? Should we be upgrading? Should we be, expanding it? Should we increase the capacity? So all these decisions are made through the data that has been collected. Another important note that we need to make is data gap analysis. It is very important to do a data gap analysis. So data gap analysis is nothing but to understand if there is any missing data, any data that is required to make decisions. If we don't have that, we need to start collecting. And again, based on criticality or ease of collection, cost of collection, we need to prioritize which data we need to collect first. But it's very important to perform an asset data gap analysis. Many of these data requirements are included in the Asset Management Ontario's Asset Information Management Package, which can be found from the Asset Management Ontario website. Thank you.